Security is one of the critical domains. Enterprises spend more than $76 billion each year, and it's continued to increase at a rate of 10–12% every year. Yet every enterprise seems to suffer from data breach or some sort of insider threat. Why is that? So the security sessions today, we have 5 security sessions dealing with the insider threat. What is the cybersecurity threat landscape? As well as we have CISOs from Bank of America, Yahoo, and Innovalon discussing what keeps them up. To kick things off, we have a marquee security keynote today. Today's keynote speaker is a very accomplished speaker, and his first company, TerraSpring, was a data center and virtualization software company that he sold to Sun Microsystems in 2002. Subsequently, in 2004, he founded FireEye. Between the founding of FireEye and to its market success, as we know, it's one of the largest security software vendors in the advanced threat and advanced malware industry. He's iterated through several ideas and go-to-market strategies. His security startups are unlike other software startups. Ashar has read and extensively researched advanced malware topics, and he has keen insight of what led to founding his startup FireEye. It's my privilege and honor to welcome one of the most accomplished security entrepreneurs of our time, Ashar Aziz, who is the founder and vice chairman of FireEye. Ashar?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Girish, for that kind introduction. All right, I'm going to talk about the founding of FireEye and what inspired me to start the company. And so the presentation is titled FireEye Origins and Evolution. It kind of sounds like an X-Men movie title, but it's really about my company. So the outline is I'm going to talk about the process I used to start the company. And the reason I want to talk about the process is I think the process is fairly general and can be applied to different domains. It's not a cybersecurity specific startup process. I'll talk about the iterations and the trials and tribulations of the company in the early days, because no startup has a straight path to success, and FireEye was no exception. Talk about how we got to a viable product, what it took, and fundamentally how we scaled the revenue in the company ultimately to go public, and then build on to what we hope will be $1 billion plus platform in the next few years. The thought process here was actually simple, but some elements of the thought process are counterintuitive. When I started the company, I actually did not have an invention or any thoughts of any kind of technology. In fact, I didn't even have a problem statement. I was looking for a problem statement. When I sold my first company to Sun Microsystems, I had the privilege of sitting down with the US Navy for a few days. And I discovered that the Navy had in-depth thoughts on how to architect a next-generation data center solution, which is what my first company was all about. But I did not have the benefit of looking at the US Navy's requirements for building a next-generation data center software architecture. So when I left Sun to look for my next mission in life, I said, does the US Department of Defense have any other problems that they're thinking about solving? In my quest to find a poorly solved problem that could have a large market size. And I found the problem of advanced and stealthy malware in US DoD archives looking for solutions to this problem. Because unknown to me, the US Department of Defense was getting hammered by countries in cyberspace, and they didn't have a viable solution. So they wanted this problem solved. And I picked up that problem statement, and it looked intriguing to me. And that is literally how the process of beginning FireEye began. Without a technology, without any notion of even having worked in the malware space before. And so this is the counterintuitive part of starting a company, which I believe is actually a correct approach, which is you begin with a really difficult but important problem statement. The more I studied the problem, the more it became obvious that malicious code was going to be used as a platform for a range of offensive activities in cyberspace. Crime, espionage, warfare would all acquire a cyber dimension. And if and when that were to transpire, all existing technologies would be obsolete in the wake of the evolution of the threat. So this motivated me to start thinking about it. And we go to the next slide, please. So then began the job of coming up with a solution. And given a problem statement, which is a cyber attack, which is completely unknown, well, the solution statement has to be something that finds the attack, right? Pretty simple. And finds the attack without false alerting. That sounds pretty simple too. But it's actually very hard to do. And the $10 billion plus security industry was completely failing at this job. It could only find known attacks. And if it didn't know something about the attack, its detection efficacy was 0. So I looked at the products, which were essentially antivirus, IPS, and firewalls. And I looked at the literature to see what was in the literature. And I read between 500 to 1,000 research papers sitting in my living room. And I came to the conclusion that none of them were ever going to work. Because when you don't do signature or pattern matching, and you're looking for the unknown attack, the literature is rife with anomaly detection techniques, but they are inherently unreliable. So my 500 plus research paper study revealed essentially that, and that it would be easy to bypass those anomaly detection techniques if I was a sophisticated attacker. And so I was gaming not just a solution, I was also gaming the offensive architecture. And I took copious notes in my notebook, thinking about a defensive solution and then seeing how the attacker, if I became the attacker, how would I defeat it? And this process went on, and I realized that we needed a completely different blueprint for discovering unknown attacks that would be resilient to the countermeasures that an attacker was going to mount against this architecture. So this was a deep domain immersion, and the stipulation was a magical product that would find this attack and not false alert. So this was my specification of the solution, but there was nothing inside the solution. It was empty. And the first thing I put inside the solution was the notion of virtual execution, or a virtual machine-based analysis technique, yet operating in the network layer. And the value of the virtual machine was immediately obvious. The virtual machine would be like a petri dish, where I could study this virus in a very controlled and contained way, this piece of malicious code. Whereas in the production network, it was really hard to do that because the network traffic is unpredictable and the user behavior on the endpoint is unpredictable. So how do we get to that pristine, perfectly baselined environment for analysis, which was this virtual machine? The second concept, which took a little bit longer, was how am I going to feed the virtual machine? Because a virtual machine cannot process multiple gigabits of information and every packet of that information, and this needed to scale to multiple gigabits of traffic at enterprise gateways. So the second aspect of this design was I was going to leverage the solutions that were in academia which was anomaly detection, but I was going to turn it upside down. Anomaly detection is trying to minimize false alerts. I was going to minimize missed attacks with this approach and let the virtual machine eradicate the false alerts, getting the best of both worlds. Don't miss the attack, don't false alert. This became the blueprint for the virtual machine technology that is now the core component of FireEye's product portfolio. So when I had these concepts, I incorporated the company in February of 2004 and filed for some early patents. And it took me many months to refine the blueprint further and to create a presentation for various customers. By the way, I was much more interested in customer feedback than investor feedback. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, how do I go impress a VC? That was not my goal. My goal was to see if there was a market for this product, and so I really wanted customer feedback. And so I got that over this period of time, and then by the time I had a fair amount of customer feedback on the concept, I was offered a seed round by Sequoia, which I accepted, and I worked out of Sequoia for 5-6 months, end 2004 to early 2005, and raised a full Series A early 2005, about $6 million. Next slide, please. I thought I'd give you a flavor for my presentation for my Series A, and that's the actual opening slide, and it amazingly sounds like our mission today. So create products and services, so both products and services, to allow organizations to react in real time to rapidly evolving and unknown threats. So there was a product component, and then there's a NORAD component. The NORAD was real-time threat intelligence. The NORAD obviously has real-time physical space intelligence by a cluster of radars. And of course, radars cannot see cyber missiles or cyber attacks. So we want to build the equivalent of this in cyberspace. At the time I was building this slide, there were about $4,000 in the corporate bank account because I was sitting in my living room. And there was no actual product, so that thing that you're looking at is photoshopped. I photoshopped it so I could have a meaningful conversation with a customer. And it's interesting to look at it 10 years later and realize that this essentially exists globally today, and FireEye did build NORAD for cyberspace. I also predicted what we talked about, which is that malicious code would evolve substantially, and it would target unknown flaws. Now, this is a well-known fact today, but remember I wrote this in 2005, when people did not expect unknown flaws to be targeted before the software vendor knew it. In fact, I got a lot of debate from the investors, well, does this really happen? Do they target unknown flaws? I said, if they don't today, tomorrow they will. Payloads, they will delete, modify, steal data. And this I'm talking about in the context of the future. Well, this didn't happen in 2004 either. In 2004, if you recall, we had malicious code that moved from computer to computer but didn't do anything on the computer. But the obvious extension of that threat was there. If I land myself on a computer, why would I simply think about self-propagation? Why would I not do something there? And so this notion of the payload was an obvious extension and evolution of malware and the real threat of the malware, if you will. And any signature-based, human-analyzed responsive technique would fail in the face of this threat. And we are seeing that in spades in 2015. The antivirus solutions, the IPS solutions, they're failing and failing in spades all over the world today. So 2005 and 2008 is an interesting period because we had Series A, and we started building this virtual machine-based technology. And we had a product in 2006. But the product was designed for the active propagation of unknown malware, and the malicious code propagation vectors had modified to move via the web. So the attackers were not coming in noisily into a network. They were coming in stealthily into a network on the back of a web response. So we had to do a product Now, the technology was always generic enough to deal with that, but the first instantiation of the product had to be evolved to get there. And we also had some marketing missteps in the first few years because there was no obvious product category in which this fit from a Magic Quadrant or some other perspective. And when you hire a marketing team, they're always looking to say, well, what product category am I in? So I hired a marketing team, and they came up with a product category, and it was the wrong product category. There's this misconception that I started a network access control company, but as you see from Series A, there's actually no mention of network access control. It was about finding threats using virtual machines. That was the first product. But we called it network access control, so that was a marketing misstep that we had to recover from, and we had to do a technology pivot. So this combination, plus the difficulty of the technology, building a virtual machine hypervisor from scratch, because I didn't want to use VMware or Zen or any off-the-shelf hypervisor simply because I knew the enemy could defeat that. So I was building something not for data center virtualization, I was building something for being resilient against a very sophisticated enemy, and I wanted to be able to defeat their countermeasures in my hypervisor. So by the time we did these two pivots, we actually had a functioning product by the end of 2008. But if you recall, in 2008, we were about to see the collapse of the global economy in 2009. And we had a number of challenges getting there. And I think it's fair to note that FireEye came close to shut down 3 times along this path, running out of cash with 3 weeks of cash left in the corporate bank account in this MVP construction period. So in 2009, early, as the economy was collapsing, as the management team defected, as the engineering team, half of it quit, we actually had a working product. And in the absence of a management team, in the absence of a field, I didn't have field sales. In the absence of any executives in sales and marketing, we went from $600K in revenue in 8 to 4 million plus in 2009. So it was the worst year for the global economy, but a really good year for FireEye. And in 2010, I rebuilt the management team. I hired a sales executive, and he built a sales team, and we hired marketing and the other functions which had disappeared by the time of 2008. We also started evolving the product into a portfolio. So we went from web-based attack detection to email-based attack detection. And we have continued that evolution ever since. In this process, we ended up defining a category that did not exist before because we didn't actually fit in any product category. And by the way, even today, we are not on any well-defined Magic Quadrant because those products are legacy products, and we are trying to reverse engineer from the threat our solution portfolio. And by the end of 2012, we had close to 60 million in bookings in the last quarter. We went from 200K in bookings in 2008 to 60 million in bookings in the end of 2012 in a short period of 4 years. So it was clear that we were ready to take the company public. And so I and the board recruited a well-known public company CEO, Dave DeWalt, who was CEO of McAfee prior to this. And he and the rest of us took the company public in September of 2013. And shortly after that, we bought Mandiant for about $1 billion in just a few months later. And from there, we've been merging these two companies and then scaling globally. We're now present in 100+ countries around the world, over 3,000 customers, and many, many government and military intelligence agencies around the world. Our projected billings in 2015 are in excess of $800 million. And very shortly, we'll cross $1 billion in billings and in revenue not that long afterwards. So let me talk a little bit about the technology, and then I'll close it off with my recommendations to everybody here. The technology was reverse engineered from the threat. This is an important point because I'm sure you're all aware that everybody's claiming to, in some way or the other, to do what FireEye is doing. The number of copycat companies and technologies is long. Every email company, every firewall company, every web gateway company claims to do what FireEye does. And unfortunately, they kind of missed the point. I wasn't paying homage to my last product because actually I didn't have a last product. This was designed purely to deal with the threats and the way the threats existed, not what I was selling 2 years before. So if you take the approach of shoehorning virtual machine technology into a firewall or into an email security solution or into a web gateway security solution, you've got a silo. And the attack is not siloed, the attack is distributed across all attack vectors. So this is designed to deal with the very dispersed and evasive nature of the threat. And so the virtual machine in this context is multi-vector and multi-flow. And to date, FireEye is the only company that has those capabilities. Again, reverse engineered from the threat, not reverse engineered from a legacy product form factor. As I mentioned, we took the web product, added email, added mobile, added file. We added this dynamic threat intelligence cloud, which is gaining the insight of 9 million plus virtual machines from around the world. And then with the Mandiant acquisition, we also got their threat intelligence from their incident response. They also had endpoint security. This has begun the process of FireEye going into endpoint security. And we have a very substantial investment in this regard ongoing right now. And we also got an advanced security operations center, or SOC, that is now married into the FireEye technology and product capability so we can give all the things that the customers need, which is technology and expertise and intelligence wrapped into one threat management platform. Please go to the next slide. And this is the, keep building. This is the key pillars of the FireEye platform. Click next, please. And next. So we have made a substantial investment in the technology underpinnings here. It is unique and truly reverse engineered from the threat. There is no legacy product form factor agenda we have in building our technology. The expertise is needed because in the previous panel, people talked about Target. So let me just say a few words about Target. Target was a FireEye customer at the time of attack. The FireEye product repeatedly told Target that they were under attack, repeatedly. I'm not revealing any secrets because this was all well covered in a Business Week cover story called Easy Target. And the fact that FireEye alerted many, many times during the attack was also well noted in that article. So we didn't research the article, Business Week did. But it pointed to a flaw. And the flaw was the alert went from the FireEye product into their security operations center, their SOC in Bangalore. The Bangalore team picked it up and sent it to the Minneapolis SOC. And the Minneapolis SOC said, I don't need to do anything about this. That's literally what happened. They went to sleep on the alerts as they were getting them. And 75 million credit cards were going out the door. We were saying, you're under attack, you're under attack, you're under attack. They didn't do anything. That means you need expertise in your security operations center that can know the difference between a false alert, which is what every other product is typically emitting, and a true positive, which is the vast majority, 99% plus of FireEye alerts. If you can't tell the difference, then you're not doing your job. And so we now offer FireEye as a service for that reason. And that's the expertise. Not only can we do an incident response, if you're attacked, we can continuously monitor your network 24/7 and making sure that the response to any attack or alert is the right kind of response. Intelligence is key to winning any battle, and there is an ongoing battle in cyberspace. Our source of intelligence is our 9 million plus virtual machines, which are at the front row of every zero-day attack. We have found more zero-day attacks than all the security industry put together, as well as are breach responders. Our breach responders have a front row seat of every major attack. So every headline you've heard about in the last year and a half, FireEye, with its Mandiant team, was the prime responder to that. From Sony to Target to Home Depot to everybody. So that gives us a front row seat to the threat landscape. And it allows us to evolve our technology. It also allows our security operations center to be extremely knowledgeable about the threat landscape as they are responding to the attacks in the customer's network. So I'm going to wrap it up with my closing advice here, which is, as you're thinking about starting a business, if you are, think about a problem first, even if you don't know the solution. It's much more important to be problem-centric than solution-centric. Technologists fall in love with their technology, and they become technology-centric. It's much more important to have a very clear idea of the problem and to mate your solution architecture to every nook, every cranny of the problem description. You will find problems in markets that have companies that have been around for a long time because those companies frequently stop innovating. That was certainly the true in the case of the security companies. And you will have to do some iteration to find the product market fit. Once you find it, you will have to scale really, really fast. And this is counterintuitive. While you're trying to minimize cash burn, while you're building your MVP, once you have it, you have to change gears and go the other direction. And you can postpone profitability because typically when you're after a large market opportunity, the size of your company will be much smaller compared to the size of the opportunity. So you have to go from here to there really fast. And you're going to have red ink in the process of doing that. And that's okay. Because you really want to be a $1 billion plus company really quickly, and you can always turn the lever towards profitability as and when the time arises, which is exactly the trajectory of FireEye. We were OCF positive in 2012, 22 million, and FCF positive, 3 million in 2012. We deferred all of that simply so we could get to multi-billion-dollar revenue run rates in the shortest amount of time. So I thank you for your attention, and good luck, everybody.
Why?